Hey y'all! Well, I was going to give you a little business update and some of the things that I'm struggling with and the trials and tribulations of getting a business started. And probably the toughest thing so far has been trying to manage a parts inventory. And I know some of y'all warned me about this, but I felt like it was important to have more than just one product. And that would have probably been easier just to do, one amp and that's it to start with. But I felt like having the color preamp, having this, and then having this PhonoStage little deal were three products that in the past people have shown a lot of interest in, and having a diversity of stuff that I can be assembling is turning out to be helpful. And I'll explain in a minute what I mean by that. So one of the things with the amps I've been struggling with is there's just an insanely long lead time on transformers from almost anyone. And the only place that really has a quick turnaround from order to receiving them has been these ISO Tangos, which obviously are the most expensive. And so I order these, and in less than a week, they're sitting here. Order the egg cores, going to be 6, maybe 8 weeks, which is like 2 months before I actually get them. And I ordered 10 pairs, which probably weren't enough given the long lead time. But I've only got so much money that I'm willing to sink into this on the front end. I mean, I can't drop $50,000 or $75,000 in a startup. And so I ordered 10 transformers. Then I went ahead and ordered another 10 from Musical Power Supplies. And another video I'll go over, how I figured out to make either one of those work well. There is a little sonic difference between the two, and I'm going to try to tailor them to people's systems, which ones I think will work better for that customer. But that's the other thing is I am trying to make something that really fits what the owner needs. And that's why I'm selling them. Some of them have volume control, some don't. Some of them are going to have a switch, so they got 2 inputs. Some people don't need 2 inputs, and they'd rather not have the switch in that complication. So I'm willing to kind of do that stuff. And I actually had one customer that has some 4-ohm speakers that said, well, but I don't know if I'll always have 4-ohm speakers. And, the egg cores come as single tap, and you have to pick one. And even the Musical Power Supply guy was saying that it's better for him to wind them with a single tap. And so I ordered this guy a pair of 6-ohm transformers, but for stuff like that, that's a custom order, custom build thing, I'm asking for like a $500 deposit before I start building it, because I don't want to get stuck with parts or stuff that, may not be popular for everyone. Same thing with color preamp. Somebody emailed me, said, hey, I want one with a black metal chassis. I don't really care for the look of the wood. Not a big deal. I mean, it's doesn't really matter what it's made of, how you build it. And so I was like, sure, I can do that. And since it's going to be a custom one-off fab, honestly, it's almost a toss-up because the steel's harder to work with. And he was fine with that, but took a deposit on it. And so then I had to order, a special chassis for him, and he doesn't want the transformer painted. And I get that people have kind of a certain look thereafter with their system, so it matches their stuff. But there's also a look to my products, and I like these little tube rings. I think they just look amazing, and especially the way that you don't see any hardware on the top of the chassis. And I really go out of my way to make sure there's no just bolts in a random place, that it's a really clean look. And so I have to look ahead and see how many of these tube rings do I have in stock and how many do I need to order, because they come from Yoda Electronics in China, and so the knobs. And so sometimes that's like a 4-week order wait. Sometimes it's 2 weeks, sometimes it's 4 weeks. It's almost just random how long it takes to get stuff from some of these sources. And then I don't want to have to order too many like special orders from Mouser. That's $8 or $9, $10 shipping every time you make an order if you forget something. So I'm trying to like order enough of this stuff at a time so that I don't have to keep going back and doing that. But again, I can't just unlimited budget order a zillion of everything so I've got enough. So I have to really think about that. And so, yeah, I get why people want to buy a kit and have it include every little, like I'm really going to try to use like acorn nuts and black oxide screws to hold the cans on, because I think it just looks so much nicer than those cheap little silver, nuts and stuff on it. And they just don't, it just looks cheap. And I don't want these to look cheap. I want them to look nice. And so even if I sold kits, it would come with all that hardware. And then just keeping all that stuff sourced from, to come in a box from one place when I have to get this stuff from 6 or 8 different vendors, it's just a ton of work. And then by the time I fab the chassis, source the parts, count all the parts and bag them all up and make sure nothing gets left out and everything, honestly, guys, there's not going to be a lot of cost savings. And I can understand people wanting to build it themselves from a kit and the fun of that. But I'm really thinking if I'm going to sell kits, you're not going to save a whole lot of money, because once you get to that part where you've got all the parts laid out and they've come in from all the vendors and everything's sitting there in front of you, it doesn't take long for me to put one of these together. Like I said, that's turning out to be the easy part of this. And that was the part that I was thinking was going to be like the hard part. And it's not. And it's actually the part that I enjoy too. And so if it gets to the point where like all people want me to do is, do the metalwork fabricating or source that out, and it's not going to be cheap. I don't know what, people are thinking. And I think some people have sent me, hey, I got a quote from this company, and they said they'll fold up the 4 corners of the piece of metal for $50. You start like telling me all these tube socket holes and all these weird square holes that have to be punched in it, and all the holes in the front, all the holes in the back. Most of those places charge like $10 a hole. And if you count all the holes in this thing, that's going to be $250 to have one of these online places do one of these. And so the only way it's going to get reasonable outsourcing is if I get like 50 of them made. And that's not going to be cheap, because at even $100 a chassis, that's $5,000 just for a whole pallet of chassis, so that people can save some money. And so I'm not sure where all that's going. Again, I enjoy building these, and it's fun. And it's fun talking with folks about it. It's fun helping people figure out like what's going to work best for them in their system, so that they can, hear some music in a way they've never heard it before. And to me, that's the fun part. And so, yeah, I'm not sure where this whole kit thing's going. And again, if I end up selling kits, don't expect to save more than a couple $100 off of what a built one costs. And if people are envisioning, oh, well, a pre-built one's, $2,000, then a kit's going to be $800. That ain't going to happen. Or if that's all the market would bear for a kit for like something like this, then I'm not selling them, because it's way too much work keeping up with the parts and the inventory, and too much investment on my end, on the front end. And then people were saying, well, you wouldn't have to include the iron with it. Well, as soon as I do that, they're going to buy, instead of a 273BX, they're going to buy a 373BX, which I've never used. And then the core is going to be thicker and the bolt holes don't line up. And they're calling me up, well, the transformer doesn't fit. Or, well, I decided to use some different output transformers that I got off eBay, and they don't bolt on the chassis, so I want my money back. I can just see that being a monster headache, that if I'm not supplying everything. And then you get into high shipping costs. I mean, these don't weigh anything like, some of those China amps where they fill the stuff up with sand and rocks to make them super heavy. This is still maybe 25 pounds instead of 50, but it's still not going to be cheap to ship. On these EAR 834 clones, it's going to be the same thing. If I made a kit for these, you'll save $150. And then there's no warranty. It's not burned in, it's not tested. Some of these, when I first put them together, there's issues with them, and then you end up having to go back through and, try to figure out what's going on with them. And you build one of these yourself and it's got some hum in it or some other issue. I've had these little power transformers that were bad and they hum, and I've learned what it usually is, or the Xeno diodes are weird, wrong voltages or something, and you have to figure that stuff out. You're on your own. If I sold you a kit and you're saving $150 on an $850 deal. And I can understand, like I said, people wanting to hands-on build stuff because it's fun. I mean, it's the same reason people buy Lego kits instead of buying the thing already put together. But, like I said, it's not going to be some huge money savings. So, I just want to, make that clear. But like some examples of things I've run into, that's putting this amp together and didn't have this clamp for this new capacitor that I was going to put in. So I ordered a bunch of these, ordered a bunch of the larger clamps for the Soling caps, and then I realized I didn't have any clamps for these, the 220 UFs. And I had a couple of them left over from when I built, there were the 35 millimeter ones, and had some left over from when I did the KT120 mono blocks, but I used up the last two I had. So ordered some of the clamps, 3 sizes off Amazon, same time. These two came like in a day, and they said they had them in stock. All of them did. But for some reason, the 35 millimeter ones, 2 weeks to get here. They're not going to be here on Friday. So I can't put this together. And I was in the middle of making a video series about assembling this thing, doing it step by step and trying to do the videos step by step. But not going to be able to do that. So either have to wait a week to continue with the video series or jump ahead and start wiring the tubes up and then come back to wiring up the power supply. And then people are going to say, oh, I'm confused. I was trying to follow what you were doing and you were jumping all around inside the amp. And so then do I have to make a new video series with like making sure that I've got every part here? And I thought I had everything, but was missing that one clamp. And so here's another example. This EAR 834 board came in from eBay, China, shipped, and most of the parts were here. I was putting it all together. One of the tube sockets is missing. So now I've got this thing completely all done, except the front tube socket's missing. So I emailed the guy, and he's like, okay, we'll ship you a couple out. They're coming out of China, and then it might take a month to get these tube sockets. And so ordered some tubes. I was ordering some tubes, so I ordered another tube socket just so I could get this thing done, because I've got the rest of the parts here. Had order of some capacitors, came in, somebody pulled the wrong ones. They got, 220 UF instead of 22 UF. And so I can't use any of them. I mean, I could use those at some point, and I am just filling up these bins with parts on resistors and all kinds of stuff that I know I'm going to be using, common values. And I'm trying to design these things with common values too, with like, just use a 1K resistor for most of these grid stoppers or whatever and just buy a bunch of those. And it just simplifies keeping stuff in stock. But then some things really do need a 1.2K. And so you got to keep those too. And the other thing, like, I noticed I was running out of these little screens that go like here on the top of the chassis. And obviously, if I get the amp done, don't have any screens, got to order those. So then I had to figure out, where did I even buy those from? And I took a picture of one of these with a phone and did a Google image search, and then it's like, okay, there's where I got them from. And so this time I ordered like $60 worth of these silly little things, both in silver and black, just so I wouldn't run out of them. And then I guess some of this too is just me being OCD. I love these little tube rings. I like the way these things look. It really ticked me off. I drilled these extra holes here, and there's people that would say, "Oh, that looks fine." It's like it just doesn't look fine to me. And I'm probably gonna end up selling this one as a blim and just give somebody, maybe $100 off of the normal price to get this one. It's got a little dent here in the front too, and I don't know how that happened. I think the guy that made them for me, I don't know. I may have put that dent in. I don't know what happened, but so it's got a little boogered up place in the front here, and it's got these screens, which I'm not crazy about, but it works great. I just hooked this thing up to the KT120 monoblocks. I'm gonna do another follow-up video about all that. It just sounds unbelievably good. I mean, this really brought those monoblocks to life. But in the future, just going to put one screen over here opposite the power switch. And I think that's enough ventilation because there shouldn't be much heat inside this thing. And I've got a couple little vent holes in the front. But then I've got this knob. And I thought this knob really looked pretty cool before I had like the tube rings on and the top of it, with RCA jacks. I didn't have any of those holes drilled, and I thought this looked nice. But once I put the whole amp together, I don't know, it just looked bulky, and it just didn't fit with the scale of the rest of the amp. And while this knob is just about the same grip diameter, it doesn't have this extra little flange here, and these kind of match these tube rings better. And I just think that looks nicer. And yeah, I know a lot of people wouldn't care, but I do. And so I'm not going to ship something out like that I wouldn't use myself. And I mean, it doesn't hurt my feelings that some people think, I've gotten some mainly comments on videos. It's like, "Ooh, those are some ugly things you're selling." It's like, hey, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and somebody, wants some, organically rounded thing with glass cages, and and that's not my cup of tea either. So I do like this, and then I also like this kind of more industrial look. And so I'm going to continue like this style and this style. And then I'm actually thinking about making some of these phono stages in this style too. So if somebody wanted like all wood stuff, we could do that. The other thing I wanted to mention, I'll save that for another video. I'm trying to do this more about the business. So anyway, I'm just trying to kind of let people know that things aren't running super smoothly. And so, I'm still waiting on the iron. So none of this would have happened till then anyway. And I'm trying to figure out kind of the pace on doing this stuff. I mean, at some point, I would like for at least the business to catch up where the money coming in is paying for the future parts orders for builds. And so things at least start rolling like that so that I'm not personally too deeply invested in this. And we're almost getting there. I've made several sales. I've sold a bunch of these things. So I do plan on trying to knock out maybe 4 more of these pretty soon. I've got the parts to get these color preamps done. So I'm going to try to knock some of those out. And then that'll help pay for the parts that I'm buying for these. should have this one here done with the ISO Tango iron. Can listen to it, see what it sounds like. Pretty sure there'll be a customer for that. And the last thing I've talked about is selling off some of my older projects. And honestly, I think that does make sense. So I'm probably going to put up the OG 6SQ7 EL34 amp for sale. I've got those KT120 monoblocks that have this matching color preamp, and probably going to put that in the Monday monologue, which I'm not sure how scheduling this video. That's probably going to go out before this one. So you'll be able to see what that looks like. Not sure what the pricing would be on that whole set. And I might actually build a wood phono preamp to go with it and just sell that whole thing as a set with a phono preamp, this preamp, and the two monoblocks. And they're probably going to need to go for about $8,000, or I'll just keep it. I mean, there's way too much work. There's way too much money in those, and probably include a spare set of tested tubes that I know will work at those bias points. And this has got new old stock RCA clear tops with a RCA rectifier. It's got a new old stock 5AR4, some really robust rectifier tubes in those amps, and just a lot of hand-picked parts. And yeah, it would take a lot to build those again. But hey, if I could sell them for that, and looking around at what people are selling really nice kind of hand-built amps like that, I don't think that's off the mark. You can leave in the comments below if you think I'm crazy. I guess if I am, they'll never sell and I'll just keep them, because they do sound really good. Mostly listen to my 300B amp. Some point I'm probably going to be building that too. I mean, that circuit's been built by quite a few people since I published it, and everybody that has built it says it sounds great. And some of these folks have said, I've got 3 other 300B amps, and this is the best sounding one. So I know it's a good amp. So probably going to look at doing that with the ISO iron and stuff. That's probably going to be a $5,000 amp with no tubes. And that's just kind of the reality of this thing. And so I'm going to keep doing this as long as it's fun. And at this point, it's still fun. And I'm trying to keep things, low-key enough. But just wanted to do this video, kind of letting y'all know the struggle points. And it's mainly there's just not a single source to buy all this stuff from. I end up running over to Ace Hardware to get bolts and stuff that I'm missing. And had to get these little feet for the bottom of this preamp. And luckily, I've got a Ace Hardware near me that's got everything you can imagine. And yeah, they were $10 for 4 of those, and that's not a great price, but they had them and they were perfect. And at some point, you have to just say, I'm willing to pay a premium for some of this stuff just to get the right parts without having to search the world. And at some point, I'll probably need to find a cheaper place to get those. But for now, hey, that works. The other thing, I'm going to go over this too real quick. Just something as simple as these RCA jacks. You think, RCA jacks, they're easy to find. They're not. You can find these little super junky ones, and I call them super junky, and it's the same ones you see on all these China amps. They're just these cheap little things that have the nut that comes in. Some of them come in from the front, some of them come in from the back, but they've got this separate little ring that's the ground for the RCA jack. And these things inevitably get loose, or the nut loosens up from pulling on the cords and stuff. And I like using these kind that have these little tabs on them where you solder the ground wire straight to the body of the RCA jack. And these are hard to find. The only place I've really found them is on eBay. So there's another place you got to go hunt and then order, and then random delivery times. Sometimes you can find somebody that'll get them to you in a week, and then other times 6 weeks later you're still waiting on them to come. And so you got to buy $100 worth of these things to have enough of them in stock where you don't have to worry about that. And when you start doing things like these preamps, it uses 4 RCA jacks on every build. And when people want 2 inputs, there's 4 RCA jacks. Same on this, 4 RCA jacks. And so before you know it, you're out of RCA jacks again. And so, yeah, I guess maybe I'm just not the most organized person on the planet, but I'm trying. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed this little inside look into my business. If you're enjoying my channel, please subscribe. Please like the video. Really appreciate all you Patreon supporters and also you folks that make donations to my website. That helps me be able to just, keep all this stuff rolling for everybody. And again, thanks to all you dedicated viewers. I know the content's been a little slow in the last couple of weeks, but I've really been trying to knock out some these preamps and stuff and get some products out the door to recoup a little bit of this money that I've been investing in this thing. And at the end of the day, I'm doing this because I like delivering cool audio products to you guys for y'all to listen to and to show you how to build your own if you want to do that route. So anyway, till the next video, have a nice day.